Roger was a no-frills type of guy. He was of good posture, stern, and his clothes were crisp down to the French cuffs on his sleeves. His tone was soft, and his words direct but polite. I'd known him all but a few seconds before I decided that I could trust this man with my life, which was why I took everything he said quite seriously. I had found the gig online. It was a posting for someone to house set. I surmised that Roger was likely some kind of property manager and was short-staffed, which was why he had to use a third-party app to fulfill his needs, even if he weren't used to seeking help. Because although he seemed relaxed, a part of me felt as if he was reluctant to let go of the reins easily, which made me think that he was either incredibly passionate about his job or really responsible. Both of which I found to be extremely positive qualities. That concludes the house tour. Now, he clapped his hands together. The fridge, the kitchen, the pantry, the living room, bathrooms, even any of the bedrooms is yours to use. Consume, sleep, relax. It's up to you, but there's one rule that I insist be followed. Yeah, sure, I nodded. Until I get back, do not open the door. What? I regretted the words the instant they left my lips. No, yeah. Okay, yeah. He didn't say another word, only stared at me. No, I get it. I promise I won't open the door until you get back. I like you, kid. And the algorithm thinks you're fit for the job. Which, I tend to trust these things. So, let's be clear here. Do not open the door. It doesn't matter what happens. Don't let anyone inside. Yeah, of course. No, I get it. Some people like to limit their personal spaces. I once went to a friend's house. It was a model home at first, the kind that all the prospective buyers tour right. And my friend's parents never got over the walls. They always complained that all the people that walked in and out of them, touched them, seeped their dead skin cells into the walls or something. They even painted over it quite a few times if I remember correctly. But still, they said it wasn't the same, that it wasn't right. So yeah, I completely understand. Personal space and everything. I respect that. Roger let out a content-filled sigh, and then smiled easily. You're going to do great. He looked at his watch. I had never seen a nicer one, to be honest. Okay, I've got another engagement, so lock the door behind me, and I'll be back. Then, without another word, he left. Don't open the doors, I repeated after him. Got it. The house was a good size. I've house sat at others before, mainly to feed their dog or some exotic fish. And although there wasn't much furniture in this one, it felt classy. Timeless almost. I walked around to check that all the windows were secured. The sliding door leading to the backyard was closed. The door from the kitchen which led into the garage was locked. Before I sat down in the front room and turned on the TV. I was in the middle of watching a rerun of Campfire Tales when I heard my first knock. I turned off the TV and waited, hoping whoever it was would go away. Hello? They knocked again. Do you have a moment for Jesus Christ? Shit, I muttered, getting off the couch. I walked over to the door and leaned in. Yes? I cleared my throat. Hello? Hi, we're with the local church, and we were wondering if you have accepted Jesus into your life? No, I'm sorry. I'm not religious, I lied. If you'd like, we can give you some pamphlets for some light reading. He pulled on the handle. They helped me a lot some time back, and maybe you'd find use for them too. A second voice came next. A lot of people have told us that they have been useful for them, not knowing when they needed it the most. If you could? Sorry, I'm not interested, but thank you. There was a pause. Sure, we get it. But do you mind if we leave you these pamphlets on the door for another member of the household, perhaps? You can grab them whenever you'd like. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. I could hear the paper scraping against the door and saw the handle jiggle slightly before the first voice spoke again. Thanks for your time today. I waited for the sound of their footsteps to disappear before I decided to breathe. I then looked through the peephole to make sure they were gone. My hand instinctively reached for the handle to grab the pamphlets as I didn't want the house to look untidy from the outside. I had no sooner touched the knob before I remembered what Roger said. But no one's here, I said aloud. Still, I'd technically be breaking the rule. I couldn't help but smile. When did you get to be such a stickler for rules? I said to myself, feeling rather proud as I returned to the couch and clicked through a few movie titles on stream before settling on an old classic. I don't know how far I got into the movie before I heard another knock on the door. What are the chances, I thought? What a busy house. I turned off the TV and waited, hoping they would go away. Hello? A voice came from outside. Pizza delivery. My stomach growled. I looked up at the clock. It was past noon. The only problem was I didn't order any pizza. Hello? Pizza delivery. They knocked again. I've got a double pepperoni and a pineapple pizza for Roger. I got up from the couch again. Roger didn't tell me that this gig included lunch. Hold on just a minute, I shouted. I'm coming. And I looked through the peephole as I reached for the door handle. But something wasn't right. I could feel it. Was this a test? Had Roger called the local pizzeria to make sure that I wasn't breaking his one simple rule? If I did, would that mean I wouldn't get paid? I looked through the peephole again. It was a young guy, younger than me, but looked old enough to drive. He wore a dark blue polo that had curled collars at the edge, and was holding up a red insulated bag. I didn't order any pizza. I could see the kid sigh before looking at the receipt. Is this 226? Yeah. Well, I've got a pizza here for you. For Roger? Yeah, for Roger. Well, I'm not Roger. But this is 226? It is. Look, the pizza's already been paid for. If you don't want to tip me, that's fine. I just have to get to my next delivery. He waited. I didn't budge. I'm going to leave it here. He directed toward a half pillar on the porch, shaking his head as he grabbed 2 boxes and set them down before zipping up his delivery pouch. Cheap ass, he muttered. I felt my stomach growl again as I watched him walk away. And walk away. Now I failed to mention this earlier, but the peephole oversaw the entire driveway and most of the sidewalk, so when the guy walked out of sight, he was a good house down before I could no longer see him. The thing was, I never saw his delivery vehicle either. I looked at the pizza sitting on the half pillar. A few cheap paper plates were stacked on top, and I could see the packets of Parmesan being warmed up. I took a deep breath in hopes to stave off my urges, but that only made it worse as the smell permeated through the door. It was pizza all right. I would bet my life on that one, but still. I didn't open the door. Instead, I got back on the couch and turned down the volume on the TV. In fact, I got to about 3 volume before I decided to mute the thing outright and began to watch my movie in complete silence. Some time passes and I ate some burritos I found in the freezer. I was mid-bite into this double-stuffed cheese burrito when the sound of 2 kids outside the door could be heard. No, you knock. No, come on, you do it. Hey, it's your ball. Fine. This kid knocked on the door. Hello, he shouted loudly. I'm sorry for disturbing you, but our ball went over your fence. Do you think you could get it for us? I didn't move a muscle. Another knock came. Hello? Maybe they would go away. Hello? He knocked again. We can hear you, you know? We can hear you chewing. I swallowed my last bite roughly and wiped my hands on my jeans. I leaned into the peephole to see 2 kids about 7 or 8 standing outside. They had on shorts and t-shirts and looked a little muddy. The other kid's voice rang through as I approached. Come on, please. We just want our ball back. I'm sorry, but I can't help you right now. I'm busy. Could you come back later? Please, the first kid begged. Could you help us? My dad's about to come home soon, and he's going to be so mad if I told him I lost another ball. I looked into the peephole again and saw that the kid looked nervous, scared even. He was wringing his hands. Fuck, I muttered under my breath. Okay, hold on. Let me go take a look, I hollered. Then I walked toward the back and glanced around the yard. Sure enough, a bright red ball with a yellow star on it sat in the grass near the fence. I grabbed the handle before debating with myself. It's technically a door, right? Sliding door. Sliding door. I played with the words in my mouth. It's right in the name. It's a sliding door. I chuckled. That's like asking if water's wet. But still the sound of the kid worrying rang in my ear, and I didn't want him to get into trouble. And I had my hand on the door when I also noticed a football laying on its side nearby. I walked halfway between the sliding door and the front door and shouted, "Which ball is yours?" "What?" I shouted through the door. "What kind of ball do you have?" There was a pause. "A basketball," the second kid said. I went back to the sliding door and scanned the grass before going back. "Sorry, kids. I can't help you out. There's no basketball back there." "No, doofus," the first kid whispered. "It's a soccer ball," he yelled. I shook my head. "No soccer balls either." "Please, could you open the door and let us take a look? Maybe you missed it." I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about it. "No, I'm sorry. I can't help you right now. Maybe if you come back later?" "No, you don't understand," the first kid cried. "I need that ball. My dad's going to be so mad at me." "Yeah," the second kid chimed in. "Please, could you just let us take a look?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm sorry." One of the kids kicked the door before I heard them running away. I breathed a sigh of relief and unclenched my fist. I didn't even know I was tense until just now. "It's just a door," I said, as I returned to the couch. "It's just a silly rule." But I turned off the TV and sat there in silence. Too afraid to make a sound. Too afraid to even finish my burrito. I didn't have to wait long before I got off the couch again. At first it was 2 shots in the air, then 3 more in succession. I could hear a car alarm go off somewhere in the neighborhood. But the sound of a gun going off seemed unusual, as this was a rather nice area. Someone screamed in the distance. It sounded like it was coming from across the street. I bolted upright and rushed to the door, peering through the eye hole, where I saw a woman barging out of her door, her dress clumped in one hand so she could run, and blood dripping down the side of her face. She looked terrified as she crossed the street barefoot, up the driveway, toward the porch, and slammed her fist into the door. "Help! Please, help me!" she screamed. "I need help! Please, call 911! She banged on the door again. "My husband's trying to kill me!" I could see the fear in her eyes as she kept looking back at her house. The door shook again. "Help me! Please! Open the door!" I don't know when my hand had left my sides, but when I looked down, they were gripping the handle so hard that my knuckles were white. "Please, he's coming." But I waited. "Someone," she banged on the door. "Help." And waited. But no one came out of her house. The 2 of us stood there. The woman's frantic knocking ebbed as the minutes passed. Was it 2 minutes now? 5, perhaps? I'm not sure. But eventually she stopped banging on the door. I looked into the peephole and saw her chin had dropped to her head, and she was smiling. I tried to look away, but she moved closer, slowly, but closer toward the door until her eyes were staring directly into the peephole. "I see you." I nearly fell over backwards as the door suddenly began to shake. The thing looked like it was going to buck right off from the frame. I crawled backwards on my hands and feet until my back hit the side of the couch. "Open the door!" I shook my head, too terrified to move, and waited until the knocking stopped. The sun was still out when the woman first came. It was now barely visible through the windows. Dusk had settled on the house, and all of the lights were out, even the TV. I was still on the floor, hugging my knees, when a knock came at the door. It was softer and quiet, dignified even. "Hello?" It was Roger's voice. "Hey, I'm back." I was so glad to hear him that I immediately rushed to the door. He knocked again just before I could reach the handle. "Could you open the door?" The words froze me in my steps. "Roger?" "Hey, yeah, it's me. Let me in." Roger?" I looked through the peephole, and sure enough, it looked like Roger. "Hey, come on. Could you let me in? It's cold outside." Don't you have the key?" He reached into his pockets and then shook his head. "Nope. I must have left them at the office." Then he looked at me and flashed an award-winning smile. "Hey, you didn't take what I said that seriously, did you?" Before turning around. and noticed the pizza boxes tilted on the half pillar. Wow, I guess you did. He smirked. We're definitely going to have to use you again soon. He picked up the boxes and palmed the door handle. Now could you please open the door? I shook my head. No, you explicitly told me not to open the door. Yeah, he told me. And you did a great job. Might have took it too literally, but I appreciate that sort of thing. But come on, hey, it's me. Open the door. Why don't you have the key? He shrugged. I don't know. It was busy today and I must have forgotten them. He reached around his pants before pulling out a set from his breast pocket. Oh, look. I thought I had them, but these are the wrong ones. He waited. Now come on, open the door. I shook my head and backed away. Open the door! The frame shook. Look, I'm not playing around anymore. Open the door before I call the cops and have you arrested for trespassing. Your gig's over now. Go home. No, I told him. Open the fucking door, man! His yelling was so loud it made the door rattle. And then the entire house started shaking. I squatted on the floor and covered my ears, my teeth shivering in my mouth as I prayed that he would go away. But eventually, the shaking stopped, and the house was quiet again. I sat there for nearly an hour before I forced myself to sit back on the couch, where I once again heard the door handle jiggle, and the sound of metal in the lock before it turned and clicked open. Roger walked through the door, looking as calm and pristine as ever. He had on an award-winning smile as he looked at me. Hey, you made it, he beamed, pulling out a stack of money from his pocket. I knew you would, and handed me $800. We're going to have to use you again next time. It wasn't long after the first time that I met Roger, when I got another request from him to house site. After what happened last time, I didn't think that I'd ever accept another gig from him. But a friend had figured out that with tips, I had essentially made $100 per hour, and many people were quick to mention that it's not as if I died or anything, really. Does no one care about my well-being? Hey, I'm really glad you came. Roger shook my hand as I arrived. We've been a little stretched out and could use the help. It was the same house. Again, you're free to anything, but remember. Don't open any doors, I assured him. Roger smiled an award-winning grin. You got it. He looked at his watch. It was still the most interesting timepiece I had ever seen. I've got another engagement, he told me. Could you get the door? He hollered as it closed behind him. I went up and locked it before sitting down on the couch. Experience told me to not turn on the TV. It also reminded me to pay no mind to the door when it was knocked, which happened before my butt could properly warm the seat. Hey, Roger's voice came through the door. I forgot the keys on the counter. Could you let me in? I didn't make a peep. I didn't even turn my head towards the kitchen to confirm or deny. He knocked again. Open the door, would ya? I'm running late for my next engagement. The rapping came a little rougher this time. What's with you? Come on. What part of running late don't you understand? You know how traffic is around this time. You live around here. I looked up at the clock. It was rush hour. Would you open the door? Hey, you did this last time too, and I had to drive all the way back to the office to get the keys. He knocked harder on the door. Open up! But I did not budge. I didn't even look. Eventually, the knocking ceased, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I could feel sweat running down my face, but when I reached to dry them, I realized that they were actually coming from my eyes. I've never been particularly good with conflict. For instance, I went to brunch on Sunday with my dad and ordered the salmon with steamed broccoli. The waiter brought me the chicken fillet and grilled zucchinis. I ate the pan-seared thigh quietly. Thinking about food, my stomach growled as it was almost lunch. I glanced at the door. It was quiet as a mouse. So I got up and went to the kitchen and pulled open the freezer drawer. To my horror, the burritos were missing. They were actually quite decent last time, even the skin, so I was bummed to say the least. I reached for the double handles of the French doored fridge, but froze before I pulled them. It was right there in the name, wasn't it? French doors. I didn't need an etymology degree to know what that meant. Although, I did think about it for a second as my stomach gurgled. But in the end, fear won out. And I retreated to the living room and sat down on the couch, hungry. Nearly an hour passes before a scratching noise woke me up from my daydreams. I had been planning on how to spend the money, things that I would buy, stuff that I'd eat. It was already practically gone, even before I got it. The scraping noise sounded as if it was coming from the door. I looked to my left, expecting a knock to follow, but it didn't happen. Yet I could still hear the noise. Against my better judgment, I got up slowly from the couch, going closer to the landing room until I stood beneath the chandelier. "Hello," I called out. Don't ask me why I did that. It's not as if I actually wanted an answer. "Who's there?" Another stupid question. I waited for the door to move, the handle to jiggle, anything really. But it was dead as a doorknob. Still, I heard the noise clear as a sunny day. I put a hand on the front door, but it didn't budge. Instead, it sounded as if the noise was coming from upstairs. The scratching came again, overcoming the stillness of the house. I reluctantly turned my head upward and followed each step with my eyes. Besides the house tour, I had never ventured up there, not alone at least. The scratch came again. I should have sat back down, turned my shoulder away even, after I figured that it was none of my business. But then I heard a meow. Now I've house sat before, as I've mentioned, mostly to feed someone's dog or exotic fish. But every once in a while it would be to accompany a cat, even though I've found them to be largely self-sufficient creatures, with the only problems I've ever faced with cats being them trapped in a room. Which, without their litter box, it would only mean one thing. Shit, I swallowed, as it meowed again. I had read once that cats mimicked the cries of human babies in order to appeal to our better instincts. It worked. I climbed the stairs and whistled softly. "Here kitty kitty, here kitty kitty." All of the doors upstairs were closed, except for the bathroom, which was slightly ajar. "Come on, cat," I hissed. "Where are you?" "Meow!" The door to my left vibrated as something pushed it from the other side. Meow. I could see it pacing back and forth from the door gap, pacing restlessly, waiting to be let out. "Maui." It growled as I got closer, almost as if demanding to be let out, but as I approached, a foul stench emanated through the door. It was thick and sickly, reminding me of cooked mushrooms after they had already passed. "Shit," I repeated. "They're not going to be happy if there is cat crap all over the carpet." "Meow," it whined. This time softer. But a thought came to my head. A bedroom door was in fact a door, even if it was on the inside. The thing started to growl as I backed away, louder now, deeper, as if it could sense my reluctance, as if it knew that I would keep it trapped inside, maybe forever. The footsteps beneath the door grew heavier. I could see the shadow of growing in size, as it stretched beyond the door's threshold. I couldn't get down the stairs quickly enough, jumping on the couch, waiting for the growling to dissipate, waiting for the silence. The minutes ticked by and they felt excruciating. Like I was holding my breath, struggling to breathe, each second ticking. In my ear, which seemed maddening, the room circling, spinning, falling down all around me until I nearly went crazy. It wasn't just quiet. It was complete silence. I couldn't hear any cars outside or dogs barking, no birds or wind. I could only hear my own heart beating. If I thought about it too much, I had to remember how not to die. So when a knock finally came at the door and I jumped in my seat, I was almost relieved that I was not alone. "You've got to be shitting me!" Through the peephole, I saw a life-sized, larger-than-life minotaur standing outside. It was holding the severed head of a goat. "That's a hard pass," I almost laughed. "You're losing your touch." The minotaur spread open its arms, almost as if it were accepting a hug, unmoving. This was in broad daylight, which should have made the entire thing hilarious. Except as I continued staring at it, trying to find a smile on my face, I began to realize that it wasn't trying to trick me to open the door for once. Instead, it was standing before me, almost as if it were posing, as if it were mocking me. The hilarity of it all disappeared as I stared closer at the goat head and looked into the black of its eyes, thinking I saw within them the fear of its last moments. But it was only my reflection. I backed away and sat on the couch, wondering if the creature was still standing outside the door. I turned on the TV, because anything was better than this impending silence. Some time passes and the screen is playing, but I'm not paying attention. I could feel something in my gut beginning to disappear, as if a blanket had been lifted from the house. And suddenly I felt lighter. I would have breathed a sigh of relief, but a shimmer nearby caught my eye. I glanced around for the specks of blue, following it across the backyard, through the cracks in the adjoining fence. Images of the pool bouncing off the sun, and a red bikini walking like a still image filled the gaps. She was mesmerizing. Her hair was a thick brown, and her steps were light and graceful. I had been so drawn to her that when my nose touched the glass, I didn't even feel the cold. She jumped in. I got on my tippy toes to watch her. I waited to see her emerge. Except she didn't. Splashes of water came up the middle. They felt like screams, inaudible wails that no one could hear, not even her family. I banged on the window. Hey! Hey! I banged on it with both fists. Somebody help her! Somebody! But there was no one but me. My fingers tried finding the latch on the window, but as they moved past the blinds, my fingertips, like blindworms, searched for an opening, before finally realizing that this wasn't a window. Not really. None of them were. They were only single panels of glass staring from the outside in. I ran to the sliding door in the backyard, but I hesitated. My fingers were on the handle, and I could see her hand reaching out of the water. She was waving it frantically, begging for help. But this was a door. A sliding door. I let out a deep breath and then inhaled again. When I looked up, the hand was still there, waving frantically. This time I held my breath and counted. Nearly a minute went by before I exhaled. A total of 5 minutes must have passed, and still, the hand was waving and waving. But I would not be waiting. I got back on the couch and ignored everything, all except the hunger. I tried to quell my stomach by flipping through the TV, jumping from platform to platform, wishing that there was some sort of app that could bring all of these streamers together so that I could spend every following second consuming instead of thinking about the drowning woman. I finally settled on something and began to watch it, just to stop the thoughts inside of my head. But I couldn't ignore the sound that came from beneath me. Under the couch. I'm hungry. It was so soft, I almost mistook it for something from the TV. I stood up and backed away. You said you'd feed me if I was hungry. I pushed the couch away and found a trap door where I had been sitting this entire time. There was a hole in one of the planks. I looked into it and saw an eyeball staring back at me. The figure backed up and revealed the outlines of a kid. They were pale as a ghost, with long black hair that was unkempt and unruly. You're not him. Who? I asked quickly. Is it Roger? I don't know their name. Who are you? I asked. Christian. Christian. Are you okay? No, I told you I'm hungry. Fuck, I whispered. It's the house. It's just the house again. I shook my head. No way, I'm not going to listen to you. Can you feed me? Christian reached a tiny finger through the hole, and for the first time since I started house sitting here, I had been touched. This was real. It felt real. I scrambled to the floor and fiddled with the lock. Christian, I'm going to get you out of here, I promise. No, don't. What? If he finds out, we'll get in trouble. He jumbled. I looked around, half expecting Roger to appear out of nowhere, half wondering if there was a murdering, deranged homeowner that was going to sever my head from my beating heart. Don't open any of the doors, Christian warned. Oh, what happens if I open a door? You'll never leave. Christian disappeared from view. I hit the lock. Fuck this shit. I'm sick and tired of always being afraid. I ran to the kitchen and rummaged through the drawers. This house had enough of me. I found a hammer and clutched it in one hand, calling the police with the other as I went back to the living, determined to bust this lock. Hello, 911. What is your emergency? I'm a house sitter, and I found a kid trapped inside. I think the guy I've been working for, or the people he's working for. Fuck, I don't know. I don't know anything, I realized. All I know is that there's a boy here, a kid, His name's Christian, and they've been keeping him under the fucking couch. Please, you've got to help us. I don't know when someone's coming back. I've tracked your location through the GPS signal. 2 units will be arriving there shortly. Please stand by. I didn't have time to wait, afraid that I would be caught in the act. I tossed my phone on the couch and grabbed the hammer and started wailing on the lock repeatedly. It was like striking an anvil. When the joint finally gave, I uncurled the steel grip from the latch and pulled open the trap door. Down below, I could see a tiny figure, shivering. He was only wearing a white cloth around his waist, and he was stick thin. The basement was completely empty, except for a twin mattress on the floor and an orange bucket in the corner. I was afraid to go down there, even now, so I reached my hand out for him. Come on, Christian, I'm here to help you. He looked reluctant at first, but eventually started climbing up the steps. When he was close enough, I grabbed him by the forearm and yanked him out of that hole, trying to cover him with my arms as he was absolutely freezing to the touch. A familiar voice from behind startles me. He sounded disappointed. I told you not to open any of the doors. I whirled around and shielded Christian behind me. Is that the man? I could feel the boy shaking. No, I've never seen that man before. Roger walked toward us, and I flinched when he extended his hand. Here, buddy. Let's get you warmed up. He took Christian's hand and led him to the couch, acting all calm and shit, as if I hadn't just discovered a literal kid trapped under the house, a house that he seemed to be in charge of. You're so fucked, I told him, shaking. I'm going to fully cooperate with the police when they get here. I don't care what happens to me. I don't care if they think I'm an accomplice. I just wanted you to know that. Roger didn't pay me much mind. Instead, he smiled at the kid and took off his jacket, covering the boy. Hold on tight, all right? For just a little longer. I'll get you something to eat soon. Roger turned towards me. I backed away. Don't you come near me. He put his hands in his pockets and said, I told you not to open any doors. To hell with that! Roger shook his head. We had so much hope for you. You showed so much promise. We? There's more of you in on this? Do you know what this house is? He didn't wait for me to lie. It's a conduit of sorts, a Schrodinger's house, if you will. Nothing truly exists in this reality until one of the doors are opened. Not really. There are many places like this on Earth, and we've watched over them for a really long time. We do this in order to preserve our timeline. Here, walk with me. He brushed past me and left through the front door. I looked at Christian, but the kid was fast asleep. Come on, Roger told me. The kid will still be here, unfortunately. What are you talking about? I asked. A conduit? He leads me down the driveway. That's right. Nothing happens unless a door is opened, and the consequences could be big or small. The pizza guy the other day? If you had opened it, he likely would have gotten a tip. But what he did with that money later is beyond your or even our control, just like the kid who lost the ball. They could have came in and took a look for themselves, but they would have quickly realized that it was missing for themselves, and who knows what their father would have done. We crossed the street. Why didn't you tell me any of this? Because once you know how it works, you can't really watch the house anymore. Not really. It's why I've had to use people like you. There were others? Roger didn't even smile. Okay, fine. Say I believe you. Then why do they start getting angry? Well, some of them. Not the kids, I guess. Wouldn't you start getting angry if you suddenly realized that you weren't going to exist? Unless, of course, you were in a similar situation to Christians. We had arrived at the house across the street. Roger knocked on the door. A woman answered it, and I immediately recognized her, even though she wasn't smiling this time, nor was there blood dripping down the side of her face. Hello, how can I help you two? Hi, we were wondering if you'd be interested in a termite inspection. Her face went from cheery to stoic in an instant. Oh no, I'm sorry. The homeowner isn't here right now. Maybe you could leave a card or something, and I could give it to them. Roger cracked an award-winning smile. No, I don't think that'll be necessary as we're only here for a short while. Thank you for your time. And then turned on his heels and walked away. The woman looked at me one last time before slamming the door shut. I caught up to Roger, but she was fine. Exactly. But if you had opened the door the other day, her kids would have been killed by her husband. Likely her, too. Even if you had helped. And you too, if you had opened that door. He's a large guy after all. We climbed the driveway, and Roger stopped short at the door. I could hear the sirens going off in the distance. Christian was sitting upright on the couch, rubbing his eyes. I tried my best not to shake as I entered alone. He looked up at me, and I could do nothing but weep and say, "I am so sorry." Alright, that's it. Thank you guys for watching and subscribe for more. We will see us again tomorrow. Until then, have a great day, night, or whatever you currently have. Don't forget to leave a comment and share your thoughts. Love y'all.